We are going to go ahead and begin the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 2nd. It is 8:30. Wayman, would you please read the notice regarding electronic participation?
Yes, I will. Pursuant to Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-75, Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, in order to protect public health, will conduct this meeting via electronic communications. Any member of the public wishing to listen to the proceedings or provide public comment may do so by using the following internet connection or phone numbers and passcode, which is also posted on the agenda. Anyone disrupting the meeting by using offensive language or offensive actions may be removed from the meeting and silenced. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then we'll move to public comment. We can have public comment emailed at publiccomment@kentcountymI.gov. Is there any public comment, Pam?
Not at the moment.
Okay, we'll give it a minute. Again, we're waiting on public comment. Public comment can be emailed at publiccomment@kentcountymI.gov. If you're on Zoom, they can raise their hand, right, Wayman?
That's correct. They can at the bottom of their screen. If they're on Zoom, there's a hand raising feature on Zoom. All right. We see nothing here, Madam Chair.
Okay. With that, we will close public comment and we will move on for a motion to pass the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Voorhees.
All right. Voorhees moved, support by Womack. Question, comments, or discussion? Anything on the consent agenda, Wayman?
No hands raised, no comments.
All right. Pam, would you please do a roll call vote for the consent agenda?
Yep. Commissioner Antor.
Yes.
Commissioner Breivy.
Yes.
Commissioner Bukowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks.
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees.
Yes.
Commissioner Womack.
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden.
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, we will go on to item number 3 from Community Corrections. Wayman, would you please go through the action item?
You bet. This is a request of the Board of Commissioners to approve the annual Community Corrections Comprehensive Plan and application for funding under PA 511 of 1988. Public Act 511 of 1988 provides funding for community corrections advisory boards to administer and operate programs to provide alternatives to incarceration for offenders. The state requires a resolution approving the plan submission from the Board of Commissioners. The anticipated grant period is October 1, 2020, September 30th, 2021. Is expected that the grant will be renewable. An appropriation request will be forthcoming after approval of the plan. This action item is not an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion by Breivy.
And is there support?
Support, Antor.
Okay, moved and supported, and we will now take questions, comments, and discussion.
No hands raised. Gotta be a quick meeting. Oh, we got one.
Wayman.
Kelsey.
Okay, Commissioner Bukowski?
Yeah, this is a relatively standard annual application. Yeah, the 135-page document that was forwarded to us was a bit overwhelming for, I think, our purposes. And so I guess my question being, what is the overall grant amount that we submit for in this? So how much does it support our efforts, and in what areas?
I
Is
believe
that
Andy,
like one pager available out there?
I'm sure we can provide that, but Andy Verheek is on the phone, and Nicole Famaro, I'm sorry, her name is different on the screen. But both are here and they can help with summarizing this, if you will. So Andy, can you help with making a summation of this, please?
Sure. To answer the commissioner's first question is, or concern, yes, it's a relatively large grant. Most of that paper, most of the length of that grant application is taken up with the program descriptions. So I can totally understand the concern of wading through that grant. As we've joked with others, it's a great opportunity to leave at your bedstand and use as a sleep aid if you ever care to. We are requesting the same amount of money that we received for fiscal year 2020, which is the current fiscal year, and that is approximately $984,000 for administrative purposes, and then to fund approximately 19 different programs in the community. Those programs that are funded throughout Kent County in the community include services for substance abuse through Arbor Circle and Catholic Charities of West Michigan. These funds are used to help support the pretrial programming through court services here at the Kent County Circuit Court. We provide funding for other services such as case management, some reentry services, some vocational educational programming through Alternative Directions and Women's Resource Center. We are also seeking a new program to be funded for fiscal year 2021 for females that have been convicted of a felony offense, sentenced for a felony offense here in Kent County through the Seeking Safety program or Seeking Safety curriculum through New Visions. And that curriculum, that program addresses not only cognitive behavioral concerns or treatment issues for women, it also addresses substance abuse issues. So the programming is, or the funds are used to fund and support a variety of programs throughout Kent County for those convicted of felony offenses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Wayman, anything else?
We're
Looks
not
like
seeing
no
any,
hand.
no more hands.
All right, Pam, can we please have a roll call vote on agenda item number 3?
Sure. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Commissioner Breve,
Yes.
Commissioner Volkowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden,
Yes.
Chair Jones,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please review that action request?
Sure will. This is a request to the board to approve contracts with community builders for the Continuum of Care program, accept and appropriate $1.5 million to the 2020-21 Community Development Federal Project Fund from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and general fund transfer in, and to authorize board chair and/or county administrator to sign the agreements. As part of the county's COC program, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development has awarded funds to Kent County for sponsor-based rental assistance and tenant-based rental assistance for homeless persons. The Continuum of Care program is designed to link rental assistance to supportive services for hard-to-serve homeless individuals and families. Kent County Community Action recommends contracting with community builders to administer the supportive housing components of the COC program. This is based on the historical performance and relationship with community builders, which has a direct impact on HUD scoring for this project. The contracts, if approved, will allocate $500,000 in total, $470,000 of that for sponsor-based rental assistance, $18,000 to administrative costs to community builders, $9,200 to the community action agency administrative costs, and $7,000 for internal support, and another $1 million in total, which includes $974,000 for tenant-based rental assistance and $36,000 or $37,000 for administrative costs to community rebuilders, and $18,000 for community action administrative costs, $9,800 for internal support. The period of the agreements will be from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. Assistant Corporate Counsel will review and approve all the agreements as to content and form. This action item is not an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Wayman. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion by Womack.
Support by Breezy.
And moved and supported. Questions, comments, and discussion?
Mr. Wooten has his hand up.
All right, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I promise I don't have as many questions as I did the last time.
Careful, don't make promises you can't keep, Commissioner
This time I
Wooden.
think I can keep it. I just have one. This time I think I can keep it. The last time we spoke about temporary rental assistance, we had asked for data to come in to show where clients ended up afterwards. And we received that, very thankful for it, but the data was a little bit limited, and I believe community rebuilders had not either collected it or were concerned about gathering data outside of the HUD requested data. And the reason I'm asking, I'm wondering if we could, through our contract, inquire more and request that they collect additional data for those who end up housed after rapid rehousing, after temporary housing, to see how many end up in another rent burden situation where they are paying more than 30% of their income. And the reason I ask that is often those who end up in rapid rehousing, as we've seen in other communities, may, after the program's done, end up back in need because they simply cannot find a home they can afford with their income, even when times are going well for them. And so understanding how many of their clients, after getting permanently housed, end up in another rent burden situation, I think is important to the discussion as we're working to address housing affordability at a regional level. And so I'm wondering if we can request community rebuilders to collect that data, namely how many who exit the program end up getting permanently housed, but in a rent burden situation where they're paying more than 30% of their income. Thank you.
Susan Cervantes is on the call. Susan, I don't know if that information is in hand now, but could it be provided as Commissioner Wooden has communicated?
Absolutely. We can require that in the contract that we track post leaving of the subsidy, and we could assist them in tracking that also to set up a system.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I kept my promise.
All right, way to go. We'll go with Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I wanted to follow up with Commissioner Wooden. Important issues. Do we already have requests for this type of assistance, and do you know how much requests we may already have? Will we hit July 1st with requests that are already there, or how? And also, how would the public know that this is available?
Susan, you can answer that.
Okay. Yes, we have requests. This program has been running, and so we tried to have it run seamlessly because of the dates. And sometimes it's not always a possible situation because of when HUD releases the money, but the participants in the program are screened at the HARA, which is at Salvation Army. and they're the coordinated entry first stop, let's say, for people who are experiencing homelessness. And so they will be evaluated there and then referred to either the sponsor-based rental program or the tenant-based rental program, depending on how they present and depending on there's a system called the VSPADAT, and there's scores that they have to obtain. And once those scores are evaluated, then their referrals are made.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Montes.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else?
No other hands raised.
All right. Pam, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Commissioner Breve,
Yes.
Commissioner Bukowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. That will bring us to item 5 from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please read the action request?
Yes, I can. The request is for the Board of Commissioners to approve the Kent County Community Action Annual Operations funding from the City of Grand Rapids and appropriate $130,000 in revenue to the 2020-21 Kent County Community Action Fund. As part of the municipal partnership agreement dated October 1, 2017, Kent County Community Action will receive its annual allocation of City of Grand Rapids funds for the 35th year since 1985. The allocation of $130,000 includes funding for administrative and supportive expenses. The agreement period is from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. This action is not an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Wayman. Is there a motion to approve?
Voorhees approved.
Support by Breve.
We have moved and supported, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion.
I don't see any hands, Diane.
All right. Pam, would you please call the roll?
Yep. Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Commissioner Breve,
Yes.
Commissioner Bukowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden,
Yes.
Chair Jones,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you. That will bring us to item number 6, also from Kent County Community Action. Wayman, would you please read the action request?
You bet. This is a request of the County Board of Commissioners to accept and appropriate $734,000 to the Kent County Community Action Fund and to authorize the board chair designee to execute the documents related to the funds and approve extensions and amendments and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. Kent County Community Action Department has received notification of its spending allocation of funding from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as part of the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program. This marks the 47th consecutive year of funding beginning in 1973. Kent County Community Action has weatherized over 8,000 dwellings since the inception of the Weatherization Assistance Program in the county and expects to add 103 units with this funding. The allocation of $734,000 includes funding for administrative, supportive, and technical training expenses, as well as funding for labor, material, and health and safety measures installed in customers' dwellings. The grant period is July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. This action is not an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Antor.
Support by Breve.
Moved and supported, and we will now have questions, comments, and discussion.
I don't see any hands, Chair Jones.
All right, Pam, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Antor,
Yes.
Commissioner Breve,
Yes.
Commissioner Bukowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Voorhees,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wooden,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 7, which is Commissioner Miscellaneous. Do we have any Commissioner Miscellaneous for the Finance and Physical Resources Committee this morning?
Commissioner Bukowski?
Okay, Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. 2 items or questions, Wayman. First, we approved a lot of money today and last finance that went to the full board related to housing. And looking at the response committee, there's significant dollars for housing and all that. My question is asking if you have a semi-simple flow chart about how this housing system works together and how these dollars, I'm not asking you to create anything. So if you can't just attach a document to an email, don't do it. But just helping, folks, either from the perspective of somebody who needs this help. So if somebody calls me, I know where to send them. And then from us as commissioners, we're understanding a little better how all these parts and pieces hopefully flow into a seamless system to help as many people as possible. So again, if that doesn't exist, save it for 2022 to draft.
Well, let me see what we can do to get that for you, in spite of the fact you give me a lot of grace, Commissioner, because I think that would be a good exercise for some talented analysts that we might have in our organization. So if we don't have it, Susan, let's see what we can do to work with maybe Mike Fortman or someone from our office to help assist you in making sure that that's available.
All right, thank you. And then the second quick question is just as an update or reminder, the process for the COVID committee. Have been reading the work of that committee. So thank you to that committee for all the research you've been doing. And as we start moving towards decisions, how are those decisions made in the sense of from the committee to finance to full board, or straight to full board, or straight to decision?
Sure.
Just a quick 1-2 step.
Sure. As of right now, the committee is rounding the corner on this allocation framework that they've been working on. The charge was to identify funding that currently exists related to COVID, and then identify how what the needs are in the community. So they are almost completed with that. Now they have a chart that will show the various line items or buckets that they want to have staff ready for the Finance Committee and the Board of Commissioners for your approval as we determine the needs. And so that will now flow through the Finance Committee once they've wrapped up their work, hopefully at the beginning of this week. Now, there were 2 items that they gave support for administration and the board chair to move ahead with: PPE, and then the issue with families that were caught in the homeless problem at Mel Trotter, and they were placed in hotels. So we moved those under my authorization with the resolution that you guys approved back in March. But all the others will now be coming through the formal process by which the Finance Committee will have an opportunity to weigh in on these and the recommendations, as we would with any requests to appropriate funding via the county policies in our process.
All right, thank you for that update, Wayman.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question and just one comment. First, this is more for the full board than our Finance Committee, but I was wondering if Sheriff LaJoy Young could provide us a presentation. It could be a special order of business or even a written document, a written report on the de-escalation training any kind of bias training, any training involved at the Sheriff's Department to avoid conflict, specifically with communities of color, given the recent news both here and in Minneapolis and Nashville. Seeing what our own sheriff is doing to mitigate that would be very helpful, I think, and seeing where we can assist in helping expand that so that we ensure that we maintain and improve healthy relationships between law enforcement and communities of color. And then lastly, I just wanted to take a moment and thank those who organized and participated in last Saturday's peaceful protest. Very rarely do we see crowds that large downtown for political purposes or for causes like this. And I think it shows the important moment we're in right now. And while it is so very unfortunate that a much smaller, unaffiliated group of individuals turn to property destruction and that those actions should not be accepted, I do want to note that fixing properties and property damage are much quicker fixes than the broken systems that have led to the over-incarceration and penalization of communities of color. And that's going to take the efforts of public officials like us. And so I hope that we see this moment as one to reflect and one to listen and one to get into the harder work of improving our entire law enforcement system, not just the ones that we manage directly and oversee directly, but the ones that we interact with across this region, so that we can work to create a more just society in our law enforcement system and create a more just society for those who've been marginalized for far too long. Thank you.
Sheriff Young is on the line today, Madam Chair. I don't know if you'd like to have her respond to that or not, but she's here.
Morning, everybody. I just want to take a minute to say that obviously this has been a very difficult week for all of us in the community, and we are working very, very hard to have peace prosper. That's probably the best way I can say it, but to still manage the responsibilities of law enforcement within the community. We've been an asset that the GRPD has used to help with some of the demonstration security that is needed. And I'd say over the weekend, we took over 200 calls for service in the city and managed the entire police load for the city of Grand Rapids while they diverted their resources to manage the downtown events. To answer your question specifically, I think it is problematic if we think of dealing with racial issues as a project in law enforcement. It's not a project. It's an everyday focus. It's an everyday focus when we hire, when we train, when we supervise, when we look at use of force incidences, when we look at how somebody managed their options as a law enforcement officer. I can do this or I can do that. We look for bias. And we've had a number of very specific training sessions, implicit bias being the most recent, cultural insight committees, and other training specific to help us understand cultural differences that we might encounter within the community. But I am not one to believe that it's something we can do a training session and then check that box next to it. It has to be integrated in everything you do for it to be effective, and it has to be a constant, steady pressure forward. I think you've seen that we've been supportive of social reform and justice reform. I continue to be supportive of that. I think it has to be looked at through the eyes of every single person who comes into contact with the justice system. What are the ramifications and what are the outcomes, and how are those improved for everybody? So I encourage all of us to stay united in trying to make positive change forward while we ensure that the security of our community is a focus as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you for your comments. And certainly don't see it as a project either. It was more trying to see what we're doing now and how we're reflecting on it, and how, I'm a firm believer that we can always improve on what we're doing. And then on top, if anything, wondering, are there any additional policies for accountability or for, explicit force restrictions that are in place, anything like that, in addition to kind of the overall culture that you're trying to cultivate within the Sheriff's Department?
You know what, I think we are in a solid place with the policies and the supervision and the training that we have in place. I mean, again, I don't want to ever imply that there's not room for improvement, and we literally review our policies constantly, both in the light of what we expect to happen and then also in the light of what did happen. We look at our policy overlaid on top of an incident and say what needed to change or what could have been better about this so that it changes with time. Yeah, we'll constantly review that. And, we've had every command officer as part of this department talking about these issues. And we don't just talk about it from a security standpoint, although that's been a big focus on what we've talked about over the last couple of days. But we talk about it on the issues that are pushing the agenda. What's causing the unrest? How can we resolve the foundation of the unrest so that we can assure security for the community and to be honest, every person feeling like they are a part of this community, an equal contributing member of this community. So we'll continue to do that. It's in everybody's best interest.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, Commissioner Antor?
Or Antor, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Commissioner Antor is next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to that discussion, I got to tell you, I have never been so disappointed in my life. The original incident that caused this, where the officer was kneeling on the suspect, ultimately causing his death, was reprehensible. And it was one of those moments where I think everybody in the country unified. I've never seen so much support for anybody in my life. I mean, it was across the board. And then to see all that go away, that unification based on what was happening across the country. And to be honest with you, I got to be totally honest here. I was not pleased at all with the response to Grand Rapids Police Department. After they've watched what's going on around the country, why they would expect that not to happen here. I understand the peaceful protest was in place. I had family members that went to it. But history shows that once it starts to get dark, even the peaceful protests turn. A lot of them do, most of them do, across the country. And to stand down while thugs of every race, you couldn't put any type of, it wasn't a black thing. It was a combination. It was disgusting. And to watch that happen right in front of the police was driving me crazy. And I know how frustrated they must have been to have to stand down during that. And the saddest part to me is even across the country, in the cities that chose to do that, these property owners, most of whom do not have coverage for this type of thing, they had to sit and watch their buildings get destroyed. So what do? Across the country, business owners were trying to protect their buildings by standing in front of their buildings. Just standing there, please don't do this. And they're getting beat up and killed. And now Mr. Floyd's death is like, who's Mr. Floyd in a lot of cases because of everything else that's going on. It's so pathetic and sad. I feel terrible for his family. And also the cost to us as a county, I don't know what the damage was to our courthouse and to 82 Ionia, but we are not insured. That's a cost to the taxpayers. And I'm just upset that the city wasn't willing to do more. We see what happens when you invoke curfew around these things. It works. We saw what happened in Lansing with the state police. They were not tolerating anything, and they didn't have the problems we did because we weren't prepared. Not us. I'm not talking about Kent County. We were backing up the city. It was their cause, their jurisdiction. But boy, if we don't learn from this, shame on us. And I was disgusted. I continue to be disgusted. It's what's going on across the country. I think probably everybody shares that sentiment. you know, that police officer, when he's convicted and put in general population of some prison, he's going to have a really short lifespan. I can almost guarantee you that. So I just wanted to say that we need to learn from this as we move forward in a lot of different arenas. And thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Okay, Commissioner Womack?
Yes, I'll be brief because I'm sure this subject will be coming up at all of our meetings. To be from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and see my first death at age 6 on Alexander and running through that alleyway on my bike down to a second alley between Howard and Highland Street, and riding after a police car and a African-American male that was running. And I saw him shot and killed at age 6. But one of the things I know is the talk in the neighborhood is that people believed he had a gun. And I don't know if he did. So it wasn't one where, you know, I grew up judging the police, but that's the first time I saw a man dead and got a chance to ride my bike up and see a dead body, and it was a police officer. And then a year after high school, getting my first severe beating, and it came at the hand of a group of police officers. It was during the beginning of the crack epidemic, so people were getting searched routinely, and I didn't want to be searched with the stop and frisk. So I have a lot of mixed emotions, but I say, first off, my heart does go out to the George Floyd family. As bad as this is, we still can't lose the issue that his death is just one of the lynchings that African Americans have endured for hundreds of years in America. And to see that on TV, a man's life choked out in 9 minutes, I think it reacted a lot of those emotions. Secondly, and I bring him up first because I always put personal life in front of property, but knowing that businesses are going through COVID-19, and we've been hearing the cries of what the business community has been going through with the pandemic, I was alarmed and very hurt to see those businesses have to be destroyed, to have nothing to do with this brutality. Being from Grand Rapids, and I support my police chief, but he's not from Grand Rapids. And being from Grand Rapids, I definitely, I called the sheriff at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I want to thank our Kent County Sheriff. She was the most accessible law enforcement. She didn't miss one of my calls. She didn't miss one of my calls on Saturday. I talked to her from 9 o'clock Saturday to maybe almost the wee hours of the morning, or at least to the late, because I stayed for the entire protest. And I want to thank the people that put on the peaceful protest, the African American Task Force, and the silent protesters, because that was good. But at the end, as Mr. Antor said, thugs of every race and ethnic group came out of nowhere at the end of the night. Most of them were not part of the earlier protest, and they destroyed our town. So to make it short, I just want to say, as ugly as things are getting, I'm a voice of peace. But the issues that are underlining in America, if we don't address them, this won't be the last time that we see violence. And America has come so far, and especially our Grand Rapids Police Department. I've seen them getting spit on, bottles hit for 6 hours without them reacting. Just standing there. They were police officers, but they were soldiers that night, because it takes a soldier to sit there and not react to kids spitting on you, hitting you with bottles, breaking your windows out. And I just thank God no one was killed. And I thank our Grand Rapids Police Department and our chief for not overreacting Saturday, even though they had every right. And just thank all of you as we continue to work together to make this world a better place.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bolkowski. Commissioner Bolkowski?
Yeah, I thought I was, sorry, bad Zoom technique. I just wanted to follow up on some of the questioning of Commissioner Wooden and the response from the sheriff, squarely with my commissioner hat on, I definitely share many of the concerns and feelings that have been expressed thus far. I do like the distinction between the protesters and the vandals. I mean, or the just, yeah, totally unacceptable, the property damage. And of course, the death of Mr. Floyd and the murder. That being said, again, as a commissioner, we meet with the sheriff and the undersheriff every couple of months as the Friend of the Court Advisory Committee. Some will remember, was it 4 or 5 years ago when the group of African-American men came forward and said, we have a problem with what the sheriff's planning to do to enforce warrants. Let's work on a better solution. And we did. Again, the sheriff continues to answer the questions every other month about cultural competency of her staff and the training that's ongoing. So again, in that venue, I can tell you, we are constantly, we as the Friend of the Court Advisory Committee are constantly talking with the sheriff and the undersheriff about their training and making sure that the deputies, no matter where they go in our county, from north to south, east to west, that they're culturally competent and they're having good results. So again, and also to echo what the sheriff said and others, the job's never done when it comes to that. And so yeah, so we are looking at it, at least in that arena. I can directly speak about, I can't talk about others. So yeah, let's keep up the good work and keep focused on where we need other parts of our system that are yeah, in woeful, long overdue need for reform. So thank you all.
Okay, I believe our sheriff has a few comments to add from what the commissioners have said so far. So Sheriff, would you like to come back on?
I just think it's really, really important that people do understand there is a distinct difference between the protests and people walking together and showing unity for reform and the social terrorists who take advantage of this opportunity to wreak havoc on any community. This time it was our community. It's been many other communities. There are groups that prey on communities like ours, and we did have them here on Saturday. We've had them here last night, ready to pounce if we weren't prepared, and they will be watching our city looking for opportunities to do bad in our communities and to cause disruption. This is important for us to understand. These are not the same people and they don't have the same agenda. So although I think that peaceful protest is a useful, society changing tool that we've seen throughout our history, we have to do what we can to protect those people who are exercising their First Amendment rights and preparing for social change. We have to prepare to protect them along with the city that we're supposed to protect. So I just hope all of us always in our minds keep those two groups of people separate, because they are not the same and we can't treat them the same.
Thank you. Commissioner Sparks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everything has been said, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Womack. I echo his sentiments, so thank you very much.
Okay. Pam, do you see any other? Looks like no more hands.
No.
We will move to adjournment. Our next meeting date is June 16th at 8:30 a.m. Thank you, everyone.